Hello, everybody. It's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to once again be joined by the great and versatile John Debney. For many years, this outstanding composer has given us film music magic with his majestic, poignant, and oftentimes powerful scores. Some of his credits include Hocus Pocus, Cutthroat Island, End of Days, Dragonfly, The Passion of the Christ, Sin City, Iron Man 2, The Jungle Book, and many more. On this episode, we will focus on two of his latest projects, Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Journey, and Come Away. It is my pleasure to welcome John Debney.
Thank you, Michael. What a great pleasure to be with you today.
It's great to have you on my show again. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to me again. And John, I would like to talk about the process of getting into the mood to deliver a score for the Christmas season. The first film you did with director David E. Talbert. How did you discuss the story and the spirit of the holiday season? What was the musical focal point?
Well, great question. My early discussions with our director, David Talbert, wonderful, wonderful man. We really talked about our favorite Christmas movies and favorite movies in general. David likes a very kind of iconic, legendary movie called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which was a musical that was probably in the 1970s, I think it was produced. But anyway, we talked about musicals in general, especially, and how David wanted to create a very classic Christmas score, a Christmas movie that had, some great songs, contemporary songs, in addition to a score that was very inclusive. He wanted a score that would, highlight different areas culturally. And so we talked very, at great length about all those things, about what makes a great Christmas movie, what makes a great family movie, what makes a great musical. So those were our initial conversations.
And of course, you had to underscore family moments, moments of joy, which are also especially important during a time like this. As we are living in difficult times, I can only imagine that you went the extra mile to deliver something that enchants the audience.
Well, absolutely. When we started this, Michael, we started the film before COVID, really, before any of us knew anything about COVID-19. And so we started down this road and started to work together I worked with the songwriters, and then COVID happened and it changed everything. It literally changed the way we worked. We had to do everything virtually, in other words, on Zoom calls or what have you. And it made it more challenging, but then it also made it more important, I think, for all of us to try to really create a film and a score and the songs. We wanted to create something that the audience can really, hopefully, fall in love with and watch over and over again, and try to recapture some of those things that we sort of have lost during COVID. The feeling of family, the feeling of being together. So yeah, the disease of it all really affected us, but we then were able to do virtual recording sessions, which were great. We recorded in London virtually. So we found ways to work around it to try to not sacrifice any of the quality for the film.
And John, the film Jingle Jangle, it features some very nice and great characters. Veronica's, for instance, Journey, there's Gustafsson. And could you please elaborate on how you connected with the characters on an emotional basis?
Sure. One of the things I love most about this film is that you have these very rich, fun characters, and each one of them plays such an important role in the film. You have Geronicus, played by the amazing Forrest Whitaker, who is sort of a broken man when we meet him. He was the great greatest toy inventor in the world. And, years go by and he becomes, estranged from his family. And then he has to, through his wonderful granddaughter who comes to visit him suddenly, he really has to kind of refine his way in the world. And so the characters are richly drawn. I love Little Journey. Madeline Mills is her name. I think she's going to be a big star. She's just magical on the screen. And all the other characters are wonderful. Edison, as you mentioned. There's a great character called Mrs. Jones who, comes in and out. She's sort of the love interest for Veronica. So they're rich characters. And Gustafson is one of my favorite characters. I think he was so wonderful. Just all the performances were really stellar, really beautiful.
The film contains some touching moments and also very inspiring ones. And it also, or just as Come Away does, it deals with a very, let's say, serious subject matter to boot, because also in Jingle Jangle, the mother passes away, and then Gustafson steals all of Veronicus's inventions. So that was very interesting. And then we had a great turn of events also at the end, when we find out that the lady which reads the story is actually, spoiler alert, Journey.
Yes, isn't that great? You have all the way through the film, I think David Talbert has created something that's so interesting. There are wonderful characters, and there are wonderful songs. I love the town of Cobbleton, the non-existent town somewhere in England, where everything takes place. And I love the fact that David, who also wrote the film, wrote the script, really gives the audience such great. He gives it such a great wrap up with the film, where we do discover, the grandmother is Journey, and then we all get to sort of fly out the window, like Peter Pan. And so it is just that kind of really warm and wonderful story. So I hope everybody that sees it loves it. We really had a good time working on it.
Right, and Peter Pan is an interesting segue to Come Away also, John, because this film tells the story of the Littleton family, Rose, Jack, Alice, and also Peter, and then the siblings are trying to help their parents overcome the death of their eldest son, David, if I recall correctly. And you worked with Brenda Chapman, one of the directors of The Prince of Egypt and also Brave, and she was also one of the story creators and artists behind The Lion King and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, for instance. Could you please describe her understanding and the vision of the story, as I believe you had so much to tell?
Thank you. Yes, I was so just inspired once I read the script initially for Come Away, and then I so wanted to do the film. So we, the wonderful agent, arranged a meeting with Brenda Chapman, who is someone that I've known about and admired for many years. She really blazed a trail, I think, in Hollywood, still does, just in terms of, being the woman involved with Disney and Pixar that was able to help create those wonderful films. So I was excited to meet her. And once we met, we just had a great time chatting about the film, about what really the storyline meant. She and I sort of shared this vision of the film as being something very emotional, very magical. But you described it beautifully, Michael. It's a story of loss, and I always describe it as these two, brother and sister, have to sort of create these imaginary worlds out of the loss of their brother, and in doing so, try to unite the family. And so it's on the one hand, it's a rather, emotionally compelling and I would say deep, compelling and emotional journey. But on the other hand, there's just magic and a lot of heart. And I love that about the film. And so Brenda and I sort of bonded over what our ideas were for the film. And then we started working on the film. And it really was a labor of love for me to try to create something magical and emotional. And so that's what we strove to do.
And of course, you had to reflect the magic of the story, and you basically also helped to stage the journey into Wonderland and Neverland, if you will.
Well, that is true. I that was one of the things about what the score has to do for that movie. It really has to bring the audience on a journey and then sort of help point out along the way what and why these two children sort of go into their own worlds, imaginary worlds. And so the music did have to sort of shift and turn. There were you meet in the film, you meet you meet everybody in that world. You meet Captain Hook, as it were. You meet the Lost Boys, all the wonderful characters from those films. And Alice, goes down the rabbit hole, as it were. And so it was kind of tricky, but it was just, again, a labor of love. There were two main themes musically in the film. One is Peter's theme and one is Alice's theme. And I really use them quite a bit and interchange them because they're really the two sides of the same coin. Peter being one side, Alice being the other. They had to relate. They had to be tuneful and magical and melodic. So it was really fun. And then we came up, I guess the third sort of musical motif for the movie would be the Lost Boys, and the Lost Boys have sort of an Irish lilt to them.
Yes.
We used some Celtic instruments, and it was fun. I pulled in a local band, a local Irish band, and I had them in the studio, and we just sort of went crazy and created and let them. I sort of gave them the storyline and then let them improvise, and I sort of took that and made that into. I sort of integrated it into the score, so it was really fun. So the idea of sort of place and time and the Irish element was a really fun part of the journey.
Your score also represents the escapism into dreams and the fantasy world, if you will, the golden dreams dust. And you had to create something which takes the audience into a place of the unknown, basically.
Yes. And, the tone of the music, that's a great point, great question. The tone of the score it was very tricky because on the one hand, you have these very sort of horrible event that happens. But then you also have to never let the music get so dark that it, can take you out of the movie because of the fact that we're dealing with the death in the family. So we always had to, Brenda and I, craft a score that would play the drama, but not too heavily, and yet also try to create this magical world. And that's really what we tried to do. And again, loving those stories as I do, as we all do from childhood, I felt it was just such an honor to work on that film with Brenda Chapman.
Great. And John, how would you describe the magic or the innocence of childhood and your approach for that? How would you explain that in musical terms?
Wow, what a great question. I always draw upon, I think all of us do as human beings, we draw upon our experiences and our background and our upbringing. I happen to have this wonderful, magical upbringing with two great parents. My dad worked for Walt Disney Studios for 40 years, so I sort of grew up as a Disney kid, knowing the Disneys and knowing everybody involved at the studio. So to me, the magic of Come Away, what I'm trying to create with the score really exemplifies my own childhood. And that's sort of what I usually do with any film I'm working on. I try to get inside the body, the head of of the character, and try to find, is there something that I personally can use from my background to represent the character musically. So for me, it's kind of a personal approach. Whether it's a film like Come Away or Jingle Jangle or even Elf. Elf is another sort of beloved film that I've had the great fortune to work on. And, it's really about, I think you crystallize it down to home, family, friends, and love. If you can get it, for me, with Come Away, I tried to get into my inner child and sort of remember what it was like to, wake up on Christmas morning and when your parents, at least they tell us over here in the States, that Santa Claus, Kris Kringle, comes at night, so you leave milk and cookies out for him. So
Yeah.
there's all of that involved with Come Away. It's me sort of taking a fantastic journey with the music in that film, as though it's a personal journey for me, remembering those times. That's really how I approach my work.
Great. That's a very good point, John, and thank you very much for elaborating on that. And for me personally, the message also is that it is essential not to forget how to dream.
Yes. That is the essential message of the film, is never forget how to dream. That really sums it up in that very last scene of the movie, that sometimes as we grow up, we lose, as in Peter Pan. Peter Pan never wanted to grow up. And sometimes when we grow up and we grow into adulthood, we do forget about how to dream. And that's a very, very key point. I think we all need to remember that more, especially right now.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I believe it was also necessary to follow the voice of the inner child, so to speak.
Yes, very well put. Very well put, Michael. Agreed. Both films have this sense of wonder, especially Jingle Jangle. Jingle Jangle has such with our little main character in Journey, it's amazing about the character that David wrote. You have this little girl who's absolutely never going to let anything bring her down. I mean, she's a dreamer. She's brilliant. She knows how to do these wonderful equations, that Geronicus has sort of forgotten about. And
yes.
And so all of her scenes in the movie in Jingle Jangle are she's always got a smile on her face. She's always thinking ahead, and she always is planning and figuring things out for the good of everyone. So I think that's a pretty wonderful message that David imbued on the film and on that character. And in general, the whole of Jingle Jangle is about love and losing love and then regaining love and relationships. And I tell you, Michael, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is towards the end of the movie when Geronicus is reunited with his daughter, and they have to come together over a night and work through the night to fix the little robotic character Buddy.
Yes.
And that is such a lovely, that whole area of the movie touches my heart every time I see it. And I've seen it many times, hundreds of times now. I just think it's really a tribute to our fearless leader and writer, director, David E. Talbert, that he really has a sense or a handle, or he's got his finger on the pulse, as we say over here, of I think what a lot of the viewing audience wants to see these days.
Yes.
They want to see movies like this, and that's why it's so gratifying to see it doing well, because, you know, if it does well and it touches people, then that will open the door to many more of these kind of very uplifting movies. And I'm really excited about it.
And these films, both Jingle Jangle and also Come Away, they offered you, I believe, a huge musical canvas as a composer, you know, to also create a contrast and balance between something that is real and the fairy tale aspect, and also something magical, and of course the grief of the characters, especially in Come Away, and also of course in Jingle Jangle.
Yes. Well, you've hit on something that's very important, that I think any artist, when you're given canvases, be they literal or musical, or perhaps if an actor gets a great opportunity to be in a film like one of these, musically, it gives me, the composer, it's such a gift. It is like opening a present on Christmas morning. It enabled me in both films to really stretch out and to explore things that maybe I'm not always able to explore. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity on both. And I think that, I think it is some of my best work in the last few years, because literally of the belief and faith of both the filmmakers, David E. Talbert and Brenda Chapman, really gave me, keys to the kingdom to do what I thought it should be. And we all worked very hard on both films, but in the end, it is such a great canvas. And both of them are canvases that we don't always get. So again, the fact that they both came out at the same time, it was just strange luck, because we finished Come Away almost a year ago. They both came out, and they're both kind of related in an interesting way, as you said. And I couldn't be, again, more grateful to have had the canvas to paint and use all the colors that I wanted to use.
What advice would you give people when it comes to trying not to lose focus on the important and magical aspects of life, and to always be hopeful?
Well, boy, if I had the answer to that question, Michael, I guess I'd be teaching something somewhere. It's such a great question, isn't it? That is the universal question. I think for me, I have this weird, even, as a bit of an older guy now, I have this ability, I think, to, really find the magic in life, whether it's through the eyes of my grandchildren or my kids, or a beautiful day. I guess that's the artist eye in all of us, that, artists sort of see the world differently. They'll look at a flower and they'll paint it, the way they see it in their mind. It's very easy, especially now, to get overwhelmed with what we're all going through. But I think, there are vaccines on the horizon, which is great news this week. I think if we can always have faith that, that the beauty of life is still there, sometimes we just have to find it again. If we've lost some of that will to love life, sometimes you have to find it, or be reminded of it. And I think that sometimes we can be reminded of the beauty in life through very horrible circumstances, like losing, in Come Away, losing a brother, or in Jingle Jangle, losing the relationship with your daughter, and then refinding it. So it's a great question. It's a universal question. I think we always have to keep trying,
Yes.
I always say, as long as there's a breath, there's hope. And if we wake up every day, it's a great day. And if we are able to breathe another day, that's a great day. And that's really the way I look at life. And I've been so blessed with being able to write music for all these kinds of projects that, bring joy to people. And that's where I get my greatest joy, is to talk to someone like you, Michael, and others that have seen these films and love the music, and it touches them and it uplifts them perhaps. And I love that. I think that's my job on this earth, because I'm not very good at doing anything else other than writing music. So I guess that's my job. My job is to perhaps put beauty into the world, like a lot of artists that we all know and love. Just try to put a little more beauty in the world, and hopefully leave it a little better than before you came. So that's my philosophy in a nutshell.
John, thank you very much for elaborating on that. Is there anything else you would like to add? Anything else that comes to mind?
Well, thank you. I think, since you reminded me of Silent Night, our wonderful Austrian friends that we know and love, we're hoping to get back there and maybe do our show again, maybe somewhere else, maybe in Vienna, somewhere. And we're also working on trying to get it up and running as a musical, maybe on television or in film. It's a project that's very near and dear to my heart, and we're working very hard to hopefully get it out so the world can see it. But since you brought it up, that was such a magical time for us, creating the show and being in Salzburg, and we love it. We can't wait to get back once things loosen up and the world gets back to some kind of a normal situation. Yes. Then we hope to get back. So great. You mentioned it, and I think that's a great way to bookend it. We had a great time, and we really want to do something else with the show and have it grow.
Great. John, thank you so very much for taking so much time out of your busy schedule. Again, I really appreciate that. I had a great time talking to you, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
I certainly did, Michael. And it's such a joy speaking to you. And you ask beautiful questions. And I just hope that everybody that might hear us enjoy the music, enjoy the films, and can't wait to talk to you again.
Great. Let's talk soon. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day.
Thank you, Michael. You too. God bless.
Take care.